All right, packed house. Thank you all for joining. I'm Jeff Danke, Intel Comms. 3 special guests, and I know you've got lots of questions, so we'll get right to it. I've got Justin Hotard, who leads our data center and AI business, Christoph Schell, Chief Commercial Officer, and of course, Pat Gelsinger, our CEO, who you just heard from. Pat, you want to say any welcoming remarks?
Yes. Thank you.
Here, let me give you mine.
Thank you, and thanks all for joining. It was great to be able to participate in Computex today. Obviously have a few of my friends joining on stage, Acer, ASUS, and Inventec. But most important, I think the ecosystem just shows up in a powerful way when we're here. We love the innovative, right, aggressive ecosystem of Taiwan. And as I like to say, nowhere in the world can you have an idea over coffee in the morning and have a prototype before you go to bed, right? It is that kind of crazy speed of innovation that we have here. Obviously, big news of the day is the AI PC and our announcement around Lunar Lake and building on our core Ultra Momentum. Excited to also introduce Xeon 6 with the 144-core E-core version of that with Sierra Forest, and more disclosures on Gaudi 3, and I liked our wall of Gaudi, and clearly the momentum that we're getting there as well. So lots of good things to talk about today, but most important, want to get into the questions that you might have for us.
Okay, so please raise your hand. We'll get mics around the room. State your name and outlet before asking your questions. And let's see. You're first.
Hi, I'm Kwon from Jirin, Korea, and this morning I asked the Qualcomm and they replied that 45 TOPS words achieved in integer 4 operation, and they said it works well on ARM on Windows, but Intel achieved 48 TOPS on integer 8. Then I guess Lunar Lake can achieve 96 TOPS on integer 4. I think that there should be an agreed standard to avoid confusion in the industry. What's your thinking?
You want to start, Christoph?
Look, so firstly, this is a very new category, okay? And I think what you're discovering right now is the innovation that is happening in this category. I think that after Lunar Lake's announcement today, Qualcomm's announcement yesterday is old news. And that is what ultimately matters, okay? It's what can innovation bring to our customers, what can they do? You saw some of this today live on stage. For me, what is important, and I run sales and marketing, we've shipped more than 8 million AI PC units. Our competition is only getting started. We will ship more than 45 million units this year. It will be a mix of Intel Core Ultra and Lunar Lake. And then we will have a product, and Pat talked about it today, that will dwarf the TOPS that you just quoted next year with Panther Lake, based on Intel's 18A. So this is an evolution. You stay connected to this. The consumers need you to explain them how quickly this innovation will go ahead. What is important to me is that we can bring enough value to the customers today of why they shouldn't wait for Panther Lake. They should get started now with Media Lake. If they're buying a PC in the second half of the year and they upgrade for Windows as well, let's make sure that they buy a Lunar Lake, because the applications are getting better and better.
And just to add, you sort of ask how do you compare, right? And I do think there will be benchmarks that need to emerge here. The category is new, like Christoph said, so there really aren't good, comparison benchmarks available yet. And you might remember, and I've personally been involved in, multiple benchmarking efforts over the years, and I do expect that in this category there's going to be evolution of benchmarks, that come through SPEC and other forums that, will emerge to have proper comparisons to help consumers understand, how the different products compare. But I expect that it's going to be, 6 months, a year, until there's any sort of coherence in the benchmarking space. And right now, that's why we've emphasized the models, the applications that are already being enabled on our platform. And we're just, with 500 models now available on Intel's Core Ultra, it's just pretty profound momentum that we're already seeing.
So penetration will be a majority of a Windows device. So CEO said, so do you believe that? So this means it happened. So your market share is pretty much going down, or you must make an ARM processor. So in the this decade. So what do you think about that?
So let me give two different answers quickly. One is, this is not the first Windows on ARM announcement. Right? And the x86 market share has remained very high, right, in it. And you need to have a reason to change. So if you believe what I showed on stage today, that Lunar Lake has the best CPU, the best graphics, the best NPU, and it has very compelling battery life, why would you change? I mean, you must displace an incumbent architecture, and you have to do so with defined significant advantages. And Lunar Lake, Panther Lake, these are very compelling products. And I haven't seen anything that would displace that momentum. In fact, our market share remains very high, right, around x86. That said, if ARM emerges, hey, I want to be the Foundry, right? And we don't say that cavalierly. We mean it, right? The partnership that Intel has forged with ARM is dramatically more powerful and beneficial for both companies than I could have even imagined when I took this job, right? And we're seeing a lot of momentum for ARM as a foundry partner for Intel as well. So on some aspects, Renee and I are absolutely the best of friends. Yeah.
Maybe one comment from me on this as well. Competition is good. It keeps us honest. I think the work that we've been doing with the ISVs, over 100 ISVs on Media Lake, over 500 models right now, that is all because of competition. And that's also what makes it so difficult to unseat Intel, because that's the power of the ecosystem. That's why we're in Taiwan this week.
Will with CNN. You alluded earlier about the extraordinary semiconductor ecosystem here in Taiwan. Can you update us on how efforts are going to replicate some of that success in the United States? Are there any challenges that you're facing trying to bring chip making back to U.S. soil after so many decades that Taiwan has spent building their own ecosystem?
Yeah, and some of the progress that we've seen has been quite significant since the CHIPS Act passed. We've seen major announcements by Intel. Our Arizona, Oregon, Ohio, and New Mexico announcements. We've seen the Texas announcement by Samsung, the 3 factories by TSMC, the Micron announcements in New York. So we've clearly seen a manufacturing resurgence as a direct result, I believe, of the CHIPS Act. So in that sense, we feel like early signs are quite positive. There was also, if you study the CHIPS Act and the history of the CHIPS Act, there was a seminal body of work done by Boston Consulting Group that underpinned a lot of the data that went into the creation of the U.S. CHIPS Act. They've just recently updated that to say what are the impacts of the CHIPS Act on the U.S. semiconductor industry. And today the industry is at about 10%, and their projection is that it's going to be about 20% by 2030. So a significant reversal in the momentum is what they predicted in that report. So I'd say early signals, but early signals are it's having the kind of impact and benefits that you would expect that we hope to achieve with a more resilient and balanced supply chain. Clearly, our projects are on track. You know, what we're doing across our 4 manufacturing sites are on track, and we're proud of the momentum that we're seeing for that. But we also have great respect for the ecosystem here in Taiwan. That's part of the reason we're here for Computex. It's also the reason, you know, as you heard me on stage today, compliment, you know, the significant role that TSMC had as part of Lunar Lake, the relationship we forged with UMC, you know, that we announced recently. So we have great respect for the ecosystem, but the world needs more geographically balanced and resilient supply chains, and I think that's starting to take shape.
Adrian Branco from France. Hello, Pat. We are in AI momentum, and there is CPU, GPU, NPU, and we know that all these workloads are not the same, and some workloads you can't put them onto an NPU. The first question is, which one will grow the most in the future for all the AI computation? And as you may know, because that's your company, you're working on other kind of computings like neuromorphic, and you get a team of Mike Davies with a Lava framework, and you use the cutting edge to develop Loihi. When do you think we will go to the next step of neuromorphic computing into our SoC?
Yeah, and right now, you know, the question is which algorithms work best on what architecture, right? And when you think about, you know, neural networks today, you know, they've been very effective on a GPU throughput-like architecture. But when you look at some of the workloads like highly sparse matrices and some of the database examples, they're actually better on a CPU, right? You know, and those are some of the emphasis that we've had. I'll ask Justin to comment on that in a second. You know, for extremely low power sparse neural networks, the neuromorphic computing looks exceptional, right? So, you know, and those areas are research areas in the AI field that would indicate that those algorithms become more important in the future. Well, hey, we just made a major step, right, on the research program recently, and we have Loihi 3 under development. Now, that said, you know, this is clearly research, so we haven't put a specific product timeline associated with it. But, you know, my projection would be, you know, that just like we have CPU, GPU, and NPU in a client, that the data center of the future, you know, let's pretend that we're sitting here looking at a data center in 2035. There's going to be a GPU portion of that. There will be a CPU portion of that. There will be a neuromorphic portion of that, and there will be a quantum portion of that. And different algorithms will be running at different portions of the data center, and many workloads, in fact, will be taking advantage of multiple portions of that data center of the future, because a big quantum machine is going to need a big classical computer sitting in front of it to feed it data and pull data out of it as well. So that's how I'd say, you know, I think all 4 types of computing will exist, and I think over the next decade we're going to see different algorithmic developments that will favor one versus the other. But it's not going to be a world of CPUs only. It's not going to be a world of GPUs only. You know, we see it as a mixture or heterogeneous computing architecture across all 3, just like we're seeing the AI PC today. Maybe a bit more, Justin?
I think you covered it pretty well, Pat. Maybe I'll add maybe a couple of comments. I think there's a couple current examples you can think about right now of where innovation is happening around this space. And one we showed on stage today, which is the RAG demo. It's a great example of where Xeon for vector database engines is far more powerful. And so when you pair Xeon with an accelerator like Gaudi, you can actually do far better search and insight retrieval across a multimodal environment when using LLMs. It's a great example of a far more efficient solution. And I think similarly, as you look ahead, one of the biggest concerns, and we talk about this quite a bit across all data centers, is power consumption. And so I think the innovation that we're going to see, as you look ahead, is not just performance, but how do we drive power efficiency? And I think to Pat's point, whether it's neuromorphic computing, whether it's other technologies that enable acceleration in power and new methods of cooling, immersion cooling, liquid cooling, we're going to continue to see ways to drive greater power efficiency. And I think that's the other vector you need to think about as you're looking at workload optimization, even in the data center.
And by the way, that's one of the biggest advantages of neuromorphic, is that you're being able to accomplish, using the asynchronous network model, you're able to accomplish the same neural performance at order of magnitude lower power. No. Sorry. I gave you a time frame, by 2035.
We're going to take you in the green shirt, we're going to take one back, and then you're up after that.
Okay, I am Hyun Kang from Seoul Economic Daily, and it was a nice speech, and I'd like to ask you a question for CEO, and I have two questions. When are you going to beat Samsung Foundry, and what is your target market share for the Foundry market? And second question is, why did you decide you don't visit Korea tomorrow?
Yeah. So two different pieces. We said we expect to be number 2 foundry by the end of the decade. And when we say that, we mean for third-party foundry. If you add Intel's foundry plus third-party foundry, you can argue we're already the second largest foundry in the world, right? But by the end of the decade, independent foundry services, we expect that we could be number 2 at that point in time. So that's the goal that we've set out for ourselves. And as you've heard us talk about, like on our earnings call, we've talked about being now at $15 billion of lifetime deal value. We'll keep updating on the progress that we're making there. But that's the objective, that we would have to be the number 2 foundry overall and the number 1 systems foundry, as we said, where it is the combination of advanced packaging, wafer packaging, architecture, memory, and networking capabilities that we would bring to enable next generation architectures, particularly AI architectures. On Korea, simply put, not the people that I wanted to meet weren't in country at the time. So I'm not stopping in Korea on this trip, but I'll be back and visit Korea later in the year. But we have super important relationships for us there with a number of the technology companies as well as customers. So Korea remains extremely important for Intel in multiple dimensions. No. We have no particular partnership to discuss today.
Yeah, hi, it's Mark Hockman from PC World. How you doing?
Hey, Mark. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, and thank you. So I have a question on the manufacturing side of things. Meteor Lake was an Intel 4 product, and the compute tile was Intel 4. It was built on Intel 4. With Lunar Lake, my understanding is that none of the compute tiles, none of the key tiles except for the passive interposer are built by Intel. Instead, they're built by TSMC. So you guys have talked, you've talked a lot about how Intel's, manufacturing prowess is resurgent. You talked about the foundry business. You've taken money from the U.S. government as far as manufacturing is concerned. So can you explain why you went with TSMC instead of building yourself?
Yeah, and simply put, Lunar Lake picked TSMC as a better process technology at that point in time, right? And that's why we ended up using more of it. And obviously, the results I talked about today, it was a good choice. It's working well. And next year, when we move to Panther Lake, almost all of the tiles are on Intel. So we'll have made a major move to take advantage of our 5 nodes in 4 years and align with that on 18A with Panther Lake for the client. Now, what I also showed today was Sierra Forest, right, which we've leveraged Intel 3. Here at Granite Rapids, which we've leveraged Intel 3 for. Also, I'm very happy to say that we have the first Clearwater Forest wafers out of fab, right, 18A, last week. And we'll be getting the first Panther Lake wafers out of fab next week, which is on 18A. So, those are both 2025 products, but I'm very excited, that we're seeing not just test chips, but now full product designs starting to pop out of fab on 18A. And obviously, as you look at those, that's full hybrid bonding, wafer to wafer, advanced packaging, in addition to the new gate all-around transistor, the backside power delivery. So it's a lot of technology coming together, and quite exciting when we'll have the chance to show you all those capabilities.
Yeah, this is Wen from PCADV Taiwan. As a technical geek, I'm very happy to see you to reach the finish line of the journey of 5 node in 4 years. It's fantastic. And we have also seen so many technology like PowerVR and RibbonFET. And how about the journey after that to continuously to shrink the size of semiconductor? And how about the technology you mentioned, the Intel Innovation 2021, that to stack the PMOS and NMOS on each other?
Yeah. So, and I've said Moore's Law is alive and well for 4 reasons. I've said the new transistor architecture, gate all around, right, that you fix the metal stack by using backside power delivery so you can get much more efficient layout and power delivery. And, again, if you just think about it, we're putting over 1,000 watts, right, and over 1,000 amps into these advanced AI chips. That's a tremendous amount of power delivery, going through it. So backside power is critical. The third technology has been lithography, right? And with EUV, we moved from 193 nanometer wavelength of light to 13.5 nanometer, light, just stunning. And as you've heard us describe with 14A, the next generation technology will be intercepting high NA, right? This is the next generation of EUV. And then the fourth and maybe most important of the technologies has been the 3D packaging, where essentially you're no longer just innovating in X and Y, but it's X, Y, and Z, right, as you're able to stack. And that is super powerful because, if you, in response to Mark's question, I said that the first die on 18A and product was Clearwater Forest, a server die, not a client die. Now, this is a dramatic change because now as you move to a chiplet architecture, which you're able to do because you have advanced 3D packaging, you're actually able to make these top CPU die much smaller, right? And that allows you to be much earlier for a much bigger compute complex on the life of a new process technology. So this ability to do 3D, stacking of advanced technologies is extremely powerful. You've seen some of the benefits of that in technologies like HBM, which essentially stack DRAMs with through silicon vias, and increasingly that will go to a base die that's high performance. You'll see that with products like Clearwater Forest, top die and base die as well, and you'll start to see multiple layers of stacking as well, and we'll start bringing other technologies like optics directly into the package complex as well. And as we move to glass substrates, you'll have direct management of light and optics through the substrate as well. So all of these, give us great optimism for, Moore's Law being alive and well, as you heard me say on stage today. Until the periodic table is exhausted, we're not done. Right?
Hi, Simon Sherwood from the Register. I was interested, Pat, when you said that orgs don't want proprietary islands in their data centers. I'm pretty sure that was a reference to InfiniBand.
Maybe.
Well, what did you mean by proprietary islands? And if I need to be doing AI now, and I look at Ultra Ethernet and I look at the stuff you announced last week, it's not ready. So what would you say to an org that needs to be doing AI now?
Well, I think when you think about it, and I asked Justin to jump in here as well, today the only, real alternatives would be NVLink and Ultra Ethernet if you're going down the NVIDIA path, right? But today, if you're on Gaudi, that's an Ethernet path, right? And you're able to do that today with it. If you're an enterprise customer today, most of them aren't building big farms. We can adequately handle most enterprise workloads, with Gaudis and Xeons today, and those would be the RAG examples. We expect the Ultra Ethernet and the Ultra Link technologies to begin to emerge second half next year, into early products, and I think data centers, AI data centers will really start to be architected around them in 2026. And if you look at the slide I showed right today, you see all of the major cloud vendors were there, all of them, right? So there's a lot of enthusiasm, for a industry standard approach to networking, really the nervous system of the data center, if I can call it that. So, Justin, anything I missed?
I think the only thing I would add, Pat, to that is this theme of open ecosystems is how we scale. I mean, OCP was started during the beginning of cloud scaling because the ecosystem and ultimately the hyperscalers needed alternatives that were standard so they could innovate faster. If you look at what's even happening today with the AI boom, the majority of what we're seeing in terms of CPUs attached to GPUs is x86. Why? Because it's the open architecture, it's the industry standard, and the interface is PCIe today. So I think if you look at that, it's a pretty good indicator of the fact that across all elements of the stack and hardware, and then even think about what's happening in software, PyTorch, OpenAI Triton, obviously open models with Hugging Face, that the ecosystem wants an open architecture because we know that's the way that the most innovation can continue to develop, and the flexibility and the freedom to innovate for everybody in the ecosystem and differentiate on their own value add will occur.
Hi, Pat. Paul Alcorn with Tom's Hardware. The restrictions from the U.S. on products sold into China kind of restricts the revenue that chip makers can extract from there, which can hurt. But it's also accelerating the China ecosystem, not only in making chips, but also in making products specifically around AI. Do you think that the restrictions are too stringent or could maybe be relaxed a little bit? And also, do you think that that will eventually foster competitors that could compete with you outside of China?
Yeah, there's a lot in that question. And, if the export restrictions, to me, they're sort of a magic line. And, I've commented that if that line is too restrictive, then China has to build its own chips, right? And, there to me is a very careful balance of what's appropriate. Now, I'd also say, that this idea of export restrictions is not new, right? Remember, we've been doing this in the high-performance computing space for nigh on 50 years. So this idea is not a new one, and I think some of the press hasn't really caught that this is just a continuation, of policies, and it's just in a new domain, with AI that largely have been in place for the last 50 years. Now, in it, I think if they're too restrictive, then China must pragmatically rely on its own products for that, which hurts the market for export. And as I would say, good policy is control carefully the technologies you export, particularly manufacturing technologies, maximize product exports, and make sure that you're aligned with the global ecosystem of partners. I believe that's the framework of a good policy, structure in this regard. Obviously, we're continuing to pursue exporting all of our products, to China as well, and we're continuing to make products like Gaudi available in China. Maybe Justin?
I was in China last week, and I think that the key takeaway I had was the desire for all of our customers in the ecosystem to continue to innovate with us. And I think that's probably the key indication that I have, that there's a lot of continued opportunity for us to continue to lead the market with many of our customers there and continue to co-innovate as we've been doing for many years in the data center.
Now, I do think, just one more point I wanted to make on that as well, because of the technology export restrictions on things like EUV, we see that the attractiveness of global products and Intel products will continue to be high, because there will be sort of a floor that it'll be difficult for local semiconductor manufacturers in China to move through. And as a result, as we continue to go to below 2 nanometers and beyond, there'll be an attractiveness for the Intel products into the China market. And I believe as a result, we'll continue to have a good market opportunity for us.
We're going to try to squeeze 2 more in our last couple of minutes. You've been waiting.
不好意思，我是经济日报钟慧玲，请让我用中文发问。是这样我们今天有发表了 Lunar Lake， 那我想知道说 AMD 本来就是我们在 PC 市场的竞争对手，那高通现在也加进来，那以您刚刚所说的， 就觉得如果要用 ARM PC 的话，这是需要一定的取代性才可以的。那在您的评估里面，高通在这一场里面，目前它算是你的竞争对手吗？还是你认为不是的？那这是第一个问题 ，Lunar Lake。第二个问题是 Goldie 3的部分。这一次 Computex 我们可以看到辉达的黄仁勋有多么受欢迎，以及它的晶片有多受欢迎。那我们推出了 Goldie 3的晶片，这样之后，那您觉得在市占率部分，我们有没有一个什么样的目标？因为大家目前都把目光放在辉达跟 AMD， 可能在 Intel 这边还需要更多关注。您有这样的期待吗？谢谢。
Two questions. First question is about Lunar Lake. We understand that this year at Computex, AMD and Qualcomm is generating a lot of buzz. And earlier, when asked about ARM PC, you said that ARM PC has to be extremely capable to replace certain parts of the market. So do you think Qualcomm is now at that position to take certain market share? Second question about Gaudi 3. And we all know how Jensen Huang and NVIDIA are popular this year. And there has been a lot of report about that. So regarding this, now with the launch of Gaudi 3, could you share with us your market share target for this product? And right now, NVIDIA and AMD is taking all the media space. And what's Intel's response to that?
I'll take the first one. That was a long question. On Lunar Lake, so look, I think what I said before, I think Qualcomm is launching their own offering into the market. We are welcoming this. I think this will help to overall create the category much faster. But, we are also quite confident about our own products, starting with Meteor Lake. Before Qualcomm launched the product, we've already sold 8 million of ours. And we have a successor product that, from a spec point of view, is superior to what Qualcomm has shown yesterday. So that's why I say it's old news. Also, if you look beyond the specifications, I think the work that we have been doing with application providers, the work that we've been doing to, optimize 500 AI models on our Meteor Lake, and that work is going to continue in Lunar Lake and will continue as we go into Panther Lake. We're creating our own new ecosystem within AI, and it's together with ISVs. Okay, so it's a new chapter of the ecosystem. Very difficult to replicate for anyone. They need to put the work in if they want to beat us.
And on Gaudi, I think our focus right now is where we believe Gaudi has very good strengths. You saw some of this in the data that Pat shared today in his keynote, particularly around fine-tuning, inferencing, and RAG workloads, where Xeon x86 and plus Gaudi deliver very, very good value. And our focus, my focus, is making sure we're driving share and adoption in some of those use cases. Many of those are what we would see as emerging enterprise use cases. Document summarization, RAG, which we demoed today, code gen. And we're much more focused on where we believe the market will grow over time, which is inferencing, right? I think we're hearing that if you study most of what analysts in the market foresee, they see a much bigger market for inferencing over time, where TCO is going to matter, where power efficiency is going to matter. And our strategy is to make sure we're enabling and winning in those markets longer term. And that's also why the announcements of what we've shared today with Xeon 6 and Sierra Forest are so important, because that's the other element. Right? We tend to focus a lot on the accelerator, but it's the entire data center that needs to become more efficient, both your AI workloads and your legacy cloud workloads. So the 6-to-1 server ratio that we announced that Sierra Forest can reach, we think is really, really important, not just for cloud workloads, but for accelerating AI adoption across a broad number of customers.
Technically, that was 2 questions, but I'm going to deliver on my question.
Hello, my name is Terrence. I go by The Poets across my social media platforms for tech reviews. And a lot of my viewers are confused about AI. They understand some of the benefits, like with the NPU having offloaded stuff for video conferencing for Zoom calls. Okay, that makes sense. Better efficiency. Things like AI teaching you how to better use your PC. Perfectly fine, they understand that. Then at CES last year, this past CES, there was a monitor that had built-in AI where it gave gamers a competitive advantage. So if you didn't have this monitor, then you were really at a disadvantage because it was showing like hey, this is where the new enemy is going to be, and therefore it really gave the whole gaming community an uproar.
Maybe
like,
I have a chance versus my kids.
Yes, exactly. So it's more of what is going to be the limits that Intel is going to help to kind of instill in partners as to what should be and should not be for AI, and really how are you going to educate a lot of the gamers that have vivid imaginations, and a lot of them have said, oh, I've seen this movie before, when it comes to AI and Skynet and all that stuff. So a lot of them are very timid. And lastly, a lot of them are very happy about the fact of localized AI, just the AI just right on their device, so it's not shared to the cloud and in AI cloud servers. So a lot of it's just education. But I guess the main question is, what is Intel looking to do to kind of cap limits on AI, self-regulation, and educate users?
Yeah, so it's a big, complicated question. And I think every technology, as I've liked to say, it's neutral. It can be used for good and bad. People can take it to extremes in ways. And I think AI will have lots of implications in different areas. We have one of my research labs is simply called responsible AI, right? Specifically to be participating in those policy discussions, helping to frame it. Intel has one of the most advanced deep fake detection capabilities in the industry today. As another example of the limits of AI versus also the benefits of AI. So I expect this to be a very active topic for the next decade for it. And I think some of this will be examples that we'll find that become problematic. Other ones will be extraordinarily enabling of new capabilities. We always believe, we've always believed that technology needs to be involved in policy and regulatory creation as well. And Mobileye is one of our businesses, right? And should a car that uses self-driving be not subject to the approval in the respective countries it's in? Absolutely not, right? In fact, the requirements for a self-driving car should be higher than a human driver, right, in it. So every industry in medicine and legal and social, every one of those has to have their own domains of limitation associated with them. And I expect, like any new technology, it's going to be a bit of a Wild West as those regulations emerge. And I think AI probably introduces more opportunity, but also strikes more fear, right, in more domains as a result. And I think it's going to be a stunningly wonderful decade, but we're also going to have some bumps in the night, as we go along the way as well. And I can tell you with confidence that Intel will be actively shaping those topics and conversations as we've done for the last 55 years. We are a company that believes deeply in the power of technology, but it must be applied in trusted, safe, brand-aware ways that makes the life of every human on the planet better. That's what we are as a company, and that's what we'll make sure happens with AI.
Thank you.